Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. Part of what's odd about this is that President-elect Trump, until January 20th, is a private citizen with no more extra legal standing before the court than anyone else. He is not the president. The United States only has one president at a time. And Monet, it's also hard for me to understand what kind of a deal he thinks he could cut here, given that this law, this ultimatum passed by Congress, was preceded by months and years of negotiating and trying to get some kind of resolution to the government's concerns about TikTok's influence, and particularly the manner in which it's storing its data and whether there is access from China that is available to this information that it's hoovering up on users within the United States. And by the way, ByteDance, the parent company, as far as I understand it, has been adamant that it is not interested in selling TikTok. It will not sell TikTok. It wants to protect its algorithm. That's the argument that it uses. So, Monet, I find a hard time understanding what kind of a deal President Trump thinks he could come into office on January 20th and try to negotiate.
Yeah, I think the type of deal that President Trump would like to extract from this situation is one where you have the CEO of ByteDance and the head of TikTok's American business coming out and saying, we fully renounce any intention to commit espionage in the United States. We are fully supportive of Donald Trump and of the American system, and we have no desire to influence it in a malign way or collect data. Trump would love to have that PR win, which would allow him to tell the public that, A, I solved the national security risk, and B, I'm allowing the continuation of this app that millions of Americans use and love, particularly young ones. The problem with that, as Alicia mentioned, is that the law that Congress passed precludes it. And so even if he negotiated something like that, then he would have to go back to Congress and get so many lawmakers to reverse their positions. It's possible that some Republicans would follow the leader and go along with Trump's pivot, but certainly not most Democrats. And I think a lot of Republicans are also very serious about the national security risk that TikTok poses, and even President Trump couldn't persuade them to change their minds about it. I do think that if you look at the brief that was submitted on Trump's behalf by his soon-to-be Solicitor General appointee, John Sauer, it reads almost as if he's winking at the Supreme Court to me in the way he spends so much time puffing up Trump, saying he's the consummate social media user, he's the greatest deal maker ever. I think it's very likely that Trump leaned on him to submit that brief, and he probably knows that the odds of the Supreme Court actually entertaining it aren't that high, but had to make sure that he was stroking the ego of the boss if he wants to continue to be nominated. So he wrote it and submitted it anyway. I think that this mostly has to do with Trump wanting to get a PR victory out of it. It's possible that there was a donor influence here, but it seems to be very much in keeping with the approach that he takes to foreign diplomacy in general. He wants to cut a deal. He wants to try to get something out of TikTok. He wants to try to get a win for himself.
Trademark Trumpian puffery. It says President Trump alone possesses the consummate deal-making expertise, the electoral mandate, and the political will to negotiate a resolution to save the platform while addressing the national security concerns expressed by the government, unquote. And Alicia, one thing that's notable about that kind of language is, as Monet says, this brief is signed, filed by John Sauer, listed as counsel for amicus curiae, President Donald J. Trump. Trump has said he was going to name John Sauer to be the next Solicitor General. And to me, it seems like he's not doing his credibility any favors among the justices who he intends to go stand in front of for the next year or two or three, representing the interests of the United States government by engaging in this kind of language. But two, what about this point that Monet makes about a PR brief, to put it that way, that maybe President Trump's goal here is to fulfill his campaign promise before the election, that vote for Trump and I'm going to try to save TikTok, even if he concedes privately that the legal arguments here are probably not going to be availing on the justices.
Strange that he would have even made the argument before the election that he's going to save TikTok, because I don't think there's any way for him to do that. He tried to actually, in his first term, to try to negotiate an investment deal. And actually, Steve Mnuchin, his Treasury Secretary, kind of swept in and tried to negotiate Microsoft, and he had Oracle. And maybe that's what he's actually thinking. But to your point earlier, the Chinese Communist Party has actually said that they will not allow ByteDance to divest TikTok. And that's because it actually considers TikTok's algorithms a national secret, which says something, or is telling in itself, right? So Trump was in some ways setting himself up for failure by saying that he will save TikTok. Maybe he thought he could, or just didn't give much thought to it and just was using this as a vote buyer. I don't know, but I think it was actually a political mistake to try to lead voters on by saying he was going to save TikTok.
Thank you, Alicia and Monet. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back later this week with another edition of Potomac Watch.